So my first question would be, why is the mandate was so important, or is so important even to today's readers or an association?
Well, the Contact Commission, which had sheltered the Urantia revelation, well, they had actually taken their orders from the higher authors. Well, I don't want to use the term author, from those who sponsored the revelation. And they worked with them cooperatively all along. So when it was time to publish the book, they were still under orders, so to speak, and they determined that they couldn't just decide to publish it whenever they want to, or yield to public pressure or group pressure to put it in print, regardless of how the revelators felt. The revelators looked at the world situation. It looked at the social setting and determined when it was timely to launch the book. The purpose, of course, in allowing publication at that time was that apparently they see the time for the book well into the future. It's picking up interest now, but someday, when things have settled down, the chaos and confusion, as they say, diminishes, that will perhaps be the time for the book. Or perhaps they have in mind the bestowal of an Avenal son. Perhaps he's scheduled. We don't know that. Perhaps it would be Norsen, perhaps it would be someone else, perhaps it could be someone who was among those who took charge of the planet after the rebellion, and when Adam and Eve went into default, there were 12 Melchizedeks who came back, returned. It could be one of them, or there could be a new planetary prince assigned to the world. Ordinarily, Melchizedeks are not planetary princes, but here we have a creator's son acting as a planetary prince, and we have a Melchizedek who's a vicegerent planetary prince, and now we have we have a Melchizedek as a regent acting for Michael.
So when we look at this, one question I was asked when I was reading the publication mandate here and there in South America and Mexico, and I remember questions of people, and one of the questions that came up most of the time were people, why was this hidden from us? It's like, the publication mandate was forgotten for some time, and I could tell you that in South America, even in Mexico and Europe, a lot of readers that I met didn't know about the publication mandate. And some of them were really, I would say, angry.
That they didn't know.
That they thought we were hiding things from them. And they say, a little bit like the commentary made before, like at the forum when it was read. Now they tell us. Well, it felt like the same way for them. Now they tell us. So, what was it? What was the story behind it?
I think Christie and Bill Sadler were the two main contact commissioners who met with the public. Dr. Sadler was quite elderly by the time the book was published, and he didn't engage in much public speaking. Bill Sadler, unfortunately, died in 1963. Christie, Emma Christensen lived until 1982, and she quoted from the publication mandate in many of her speeches, but she didn't identify where it came from. And of course, the other leaders also cribbed parts of it. I don't think it was ever read publicly as a whole again until apparently recently, but parts and parcels of it. I think there was a time when a number of people had heard that what I said something before. They heard that I guess we won't be hearing from them again. The publication mandate was the last message they received. And as Dr. Sadler would say, they didn't even say goodbye. So they perhaps were hoping there would be more information imparted to them, but it wasn't, and they felt pretty much on their own. They were also assigned the task, the contact commissioners, of writing a history, and they were saving material for that history. Dr. Sadler wrote one history, I should say, he put it together. All of the commissioners worked on it while they were still alive. It was pretty much the same script that Doctor had used to interview prospective forum members. I recognized it immediately when it was found as his script and what they all used when they interviewed folks. So he didn't read the mandate to us, but he would just say that we're going to be starting study groups and training teachers, going to try to have a school. And I think they had more grandiose plans than, as it turned out, the revelators wanted. Many of the people thought that they should put ads in newspapers and magazines, publications, and launch a good-sized publicity campaign. In fact, they had one all worked out, and they heard here that it should be virtually person to person. And in fact, they did say person to person for many years as the only best way of imparting it to people.
So you would think that today the best way of sharing the Urantia book itself would be person to person?
Well, it's proven itself to be good, and there are many ways that people find the book now. In libraries, bookstores. Bookstores are diminishing in number, and so what lies ahead? And of course, online, people can come across something about it.
And why would study group be so important?
They work. It's a small group sitting together, reading the papers, exchanging ideas, trading insights. It's more personal, it's more individual, it's not somebody preaching at you. A large auditorium full of people is perhaps exciting, but to have give and take and discussion, it's a small study group is pretty successful. And I think the revelators could see how the forum operated. Forum was a little bigger than the average study group, of course, for each meeting. It would seat about 40 people at the most, and not everybody would talk. Many people would be quiet. They were too shy to speak up. And there were the usual people who did all the talking from the audience. And so to allow the give and take and the exchange of ideas, smaller groups seemed to be workable.
Was there ever talk about how many study groups would take to help change the world?
In the mandate, they say thousands of study groups. You must establish.
But then they say that the next era should be the time when man is ready to embrace truth. And if we look at the world as it is now, we're far from being there. And before this change, it takes a lot of things to happen in the world. So I believe that by training leaders and teachers and having a lot of study groups and make sure that the book is translated in many tongues, we are readying the world.
You're preparing for
time in the future, because they tell us also that the future is not open for our eyes.
Yes, you can imagine if there were a sudden huge spurt of people inquiring about the Urantia book and where can I find more and where can I read it with other people. If you're not ready with study groups or some sort of organization, they will lose interest and go other ways. Whereas if they come to a study group, they can feel welcome and they can get insights that they didn't have. Misunderstandings are changed about what something means. The nice thing about study groups, they're non-interpretive. The leader, there's no one who can claim that they know the book 100%. Everyone is always learning. It's an ongoing process, lifelong, and for even beyond life. We'll probably be studying the Urantia book. Where we go next.
So, as leader within this community of Urantia book reader, shouldn't our main task is to promote more study groups and involve ourselves in study groups?
Oh, definitely.
As a basic function to do.
Yes.
As a basic service to do to this revolution.
This seems to be the study book year. Both organizations are, in fact, all three are emphasizing study groups. And it wasn't always that way. There were people who said, oh, study groups, what? I don't like study groups, or I was involved in one once and I didn't care for it, or people are, just all kinds of things. But I think they're realizing that it's a good way to make people feel welcome.
Now, a lot of people have said that study groups should be less autonomous, which I also believe. But couldn't we not help, the organizations themselves who are there? They're supporting study groups, but in some way, shouldn't it not then be able to serve, but to help study groups become better at what they do? Like giving seminars about study groups, helping people get together, or giving them material that they could study within the study group to make it more effective, more practical in nature. Because I've seen throughout the years that a lot of study groups are mostly tend on the intellectual aspect of studying the Urantia book. That doesn't always go well with women. Women are more practical in nature. They want more things that has a relationship to their own lives and to their own family. So do you think that organization could provide material or some training, some form of training as courses, maybe UBIS course, and where people could learn how to manage better a study group, to make it more of a place where people could learn to put those teaching in their own life, to acquire those teaching and live them.
Yes, I just read last night, as a matter of fact, on a particular website, a very excellent study group guide. It covers everything you could possibly want to know about how to feed and grow study groups. And it was a compilation of many ideas, many writings over the years. And I think it'll be very helpful to people. And I think there have been booklets and shorter, longer things written along those lines that would guide folks in starting their own study groups, and the care and feeding and of the groups and how they can blossom And it's important to be responsible and not hit or miss in scheduling. It should be something regular, and there should be people who are dedicated to attending every meeting. I'm also involved in a women's study group, and they happen to be mothers and daughters. And it just satisfies a need. And we've had a couple of men want to join, but we're kind of, no, don't think so. We'd scare off some of the daughters, maybe. Yeah. And I think I've been involved in 5 study groups in addition to the forum, and they were all a little different, and they were so good. I just can't imagine other study groups being any better than that, but I'm sure they're good. And it's just something that is so satisfying, and it's you learn something. Sometimes a study group can get stale, and after a while, somebody says, we've talked this same subject to death. Maybe we should end this study group and start something else. That's good too. It's not a formal organization, and you can regroup and form different groups, and we've done some of that too.
But shouldn't be the task also, the study group hosts. I believe that study group hosts are truly the leaders of this whole movement, because it's a loosely organized, movement, as a study group, network is. So I tend to see it that study group hosts are the true leader of this revelation. They're the ones that will bring this out to the world, not the organization itself. They're there to support the initiative of study group. So as leader of study group, don't you think that those leaders should, have as a task to promote more study groups, to help train new leaders and teachers, so they can take over and create more study groups? Because who's going to create all those thousands of study groups, if not the leader themselves who are already hosts of study groups?
Well, 2 things you need. You need a good leader, somebody who can get people together, who can organize, who can get the venue, provide the refreshments, or assign the refreshments, or schedule the meetings, what they're going to talk about. And a teacher, someone who's well-versed in the teachings. They don't necessarily have to be the same person. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But there's a role, 2 separate roles. And I know of one person who can organize like crazy, but he hardly opens his mouth in a study group. And so, we all do what we can and in what our particular gifts are.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.